We turn our attention now to chapter 4, which deals with the topic of rest. We will look at the roles of faith and unbelief as they relate to rest. There are three imperatives in this chapter found in verses 1, 11, and 16. Verse 1 is, "Let us therefore fear." Verse 11 is, "Let us therefore labor." And verse 16 says, "Let us therefore come boldly." There are also three types of rest mentioned in this chapter: the creation rest, which is God's rest available to all; Canaan rest, a negative example of how God's rest can be missed; and Christ's rest, available to all who believe. A key question that one might ask in reading chapters 4 through 6 is whether or not the Canaan rest is analogous to salvation. If this is the case, then Moses, Aaron, and Miriam are unsaved, as they were not able to enter the Canaan rest. And note with me also that Moses is mentioned in the Faith Hall of Fame in Hebrews chapter 11. It seems that what is in view here is unbroken fellowship with God. Jesus seems to indicate in Matthew 11:18 that we enter the rest when we are saved. He says, "Come unto me, all ye who are weary laden, and I will give you rest." But we enjoy the rest on a moment-by-moment basis as we exercise faith. A corollary question is, can a person leave the rest once saved? If the answer is yes, and the matter in view is salvation, then eternal security, or the saying, "once saved, always saved," is rendered meaningless. If the answer is no, then it is unclear what Hebrews 4 is teaching. Therefore, the issue seems to be fellowship. Today we'll look at verses 1 through 5, which is titled, God Created. Now, in looking at verse 1, the word for fear is the Greek word phobos, from which we get the English word phobia, and means terror. It does not mean reverence or respect. There are other Greek terms to convey those meanings. Note also that the word for coming short is the same Greek word that's used in Romans 3:23 for sin, where it says, "All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." And also note that if the author is addressing believers here, as would seem to be supported in verse 3, then there is the possibility that a believer may fall short of the promises of God. Verse 2 would seem to indicate that it is necessary to believe to receive the promise. And note also that belief is connected with action. In other words, skin needs to be put on the skeleton of faith, the skin of obedience and action. In this case, it was necessary for the Israelites to act on their belief and take the land that God had promised. The word for united here means mixed, and is used to denote the mixing of food and gastric juices for the purpose of digestion, which makes nutrients available for the health of the body. If the food is not properly united or mixed, it can result in illness or even death. Verses 3 through 4 indicate that God's work has been finished. It is complete. Therefore, we can believe and enter the rest, or we can choose not to believe and fail to enter the rest. Note that the rest here specifically in view is the first of the three we outlined, the creation rest. Let's turn now to our so what questions. The first one is, what are the consequences of not entering God's rest or breaking fellowship with Him? Number 2, do you see any parallels between chapter 4 and Leviticus 16, verses 29 through 31? You may want to stop the video here and examine that passage before you go on. And finally, how does or how should fear, as used in chapter 4, verse 1, relate to the believer? Consider these questions, and I'll see you back in the next video.